Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. I appreciate you joining me today in this very exciting video. As you can tell by the thumbnail and probably the title, I got a Fujifilm X100V, and I want to talk to you about my my beginning or initial thoughts of the camera, take a first look at it, and then maybe later on down the road, after I've had it for a month or so, we'll do a full-on review. But as for now, I'm just going to talk about some of the things that I've noticed or I like about the camera, some things maybe I don't like about the camera, and just go over some brief tech specs. Also, throughout the video, or maybe at the end, I'm going to add some sample photos that I've taken with the camera so far. Feel free to view those, and if you like those, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon so you are notified when I release new content. Also, if you want to check out some of my photos and you want to always be in the loop when I release new photos that I think are Instagram or print worthy, go over to Instagram and check out @MigFigPhoto. Again, my Instagram is @MigFigPhoto, and check out some of my photography. I would appreciate it if you follow me, and please like the ones that you do like, and that'll help me out to find out what you all like and appreciate. So without further ado, let's get into the first look of the Fujifilm X100V. Alright, so I got my phone with me. It's going to be kind of like my little cheat sheet. I feel like sometimes when I'm talking about camera gear, or even in my Fujifilm X100S video, I kind of babble on, kind of lose focus, lose track. So in today's video, I will be looking at my phone. So if you see me look down, I'm just looking at my phone. Sorry. It's going to be my little teleprompter for today. So the first thing I want to talk about are, brief tech specs on the Fujifilm X100V. It does sport the new 26.1 megapixel X-Trans 4 sensor that is shared with the X Pro 3, the XT3, and the XT4. It has a brand new Fujinon 23mm f2, and it's the version 2 of this lens. It has a brand new hybrid viewfinder, and that hybrid viewfinder is shared with the X Pro 3, if I'm not mistaken. It also sports a new tilt touchscreen on the back, and we'll talk about a lot of these features later on in the video, some of my pros and cons. It does support 4K video, full DCI at 30 frames per second, 425 point autofocus, and a native ISO at 160, which is a little bit better than the native ISO of the previous versions. I believe it was a native 200 ISO on the previous version, so that gets a boost. Also, it sports a 11 FPS shooting on stills with the mechanical shutter, that is. Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and some new film simulations to talk about. So those are the few tech specs. I don't really like going over those, but I do want you to be aware that there are some tech spec upgrades. This video, I kind of want to talk about what the practical uses of some of those upgrades are, what works, what doesn't, and maybe what we wish were added but weren't. And we'll go from there. So let's start off with the pros. And these are some of the pros, not necessarily in any particular order, just some things that I noticed that I've enjoyed or were impressed with my initial use of the camera so far. So the very first one that has popped out to me, that stood out to me, that's been a pretty substantial upgrade in my opinion over the previous models, is the brand new lens. So this lens shares some of the same specs as far as the same focal length as 23mm f2 aperture, which is the same as the previous versions. But this camera lens is substantially upgraded in my opinion. I think they added one more aspherical element, if I said that correctly. But just to let you know, if you don't know already, the lens that was on the X100, the original X100, all the way up to the X100F was the exact same lens. So this is the first time in the X100V that they've upgraded the lens. And I will say that it's been a very much appreciated upgrade. I didn't know what to expect with the new lens. I didn't think it was going to blow me away like it has. But you will see in the sample images, or if you've seen other sample images from the Fujifilm X100V, that the new lens is amazing. It's super sharp, and it's super sharp wide open. One of the biggest gripes that people had, myself included, with the old lens was that when you stop down to f2 wide open, the footage or the pictures were not sharp. They were fuzzy, they were hazy, depending on the light conditions. Also, too, the lens flares that you would get from certain lighting conditions, all that has been taken away. This lens is completely sharp, super sharp, wide open at f2. It's not only is it usable, but it's, in my opinion, the image quality it's blown me away so far, and I cannot wait to use this camera in a variety of situations and have the ability to use this lens and this camera at f2. Another thing that I liked about this camera, as you know, if you've seen any of my previous videos or if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I'm a primarily black and white photographer. I love black and white, I love the characteristics of black and white, and I love the Acros film simulation in the X100 series. But this new classic neg film simulation has really got me excited about shooting color again. I love this simulation. I love the photos that I've taken with it so far. And to me, out of all the Fujifilm's film simulations so far, I think that classic neg is kind of what I think about when I look at classic neg. I think of film, and I know a lot of the other film simulations do a great job of capturing or reproducing certain characteristics of different films, but that classic neg film simulation, to me, it reminds me more of film than any other film simulation previously, and it's got me really excited to shoot color again. Maybe I'll start posting some color photos on my Instagram. As of right now, it's primarily black and white, or I think it's just black and white on my Instagram. But maybe if I find a photo that I really truly love and I love more than black and white, maybe I'll post it on my Instagram. The next one is the 4K video. So this is another feature that I was like, okay, cool. They added 4K video. I don't probably won't really use it much. I know that this doesn't have IBIS, and it's not designed for video. It's actually really hard to use this and get stable footage handheld. So I didn't imagine I would use it that much, but the 4K video on this camera has really surprised me. If you have a tripod or if you have a gimbal, the 4K footage that comes off of this camera is extremely usable. It's beautiful, and they also added the Eterna film simulation to this camera, and I think that it will really it'll really pair well with the new 4K video capabilities with this camera. The next feature I like about this camera is the weather sealing. The weather sealing in this camera allows me to go out and shoot in adverse weather conditions, whereas previously I would not feel comfortable taking my camera out if I knew that it were going to rain, or if it were raining outside. I definitely want to take out the X100S. With this camera, that changes, and the more often you can take your camera out, the more shots you're going to be able to take, and your photography is going to be better, and you're not going to be limited with the weather, different weather conditions that are out there. So that's a big plus for me. It does have a bigger and better viewfinder. So one of the things I've always loved about the X100 series is the hybrid viewfinder, and particularly the optical viewfinder is something that for me personally, that's what I use with my X100S. A couple of different reasons for that. One of them is I just like using that optical viewfinder. It was cool. It was nice to have that option to use an optical or an electronic viewfinder. And two, at least in my case, I felt that the autofocus and the camera functioned a little bit faster when I used the OVF over the EVF. With this camera, that's no longer a factor. It sports the new sensor and processor, so this camera is worlds faster than the X100S that I once had. But the EVF in this camera is so much better than the X100S that I had. It had, I think it's 3.6 million dots, and it is a bigger EVF. So when I put this camera up to my eye, I can see everything. Everything's crystal clear. It's bright. It's bigger. And personally, I find myself using the EVF more now than I ever did with the X100S. I think that's just props to Fujifilm making upgrades and adjustments to their cameras. Also, I guess this kind of goes along with the weather sealing, but the camera is made with a lot better quality materials. As you can see, I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if the camera does this justice, but the camera is made a lot better than any of the previous versions of the X100 series. It's the top plate is I think a single milled out piece of aluminum, and it just has a premium feel to it. It has a premium build quality to it that you didn't really see in the previous X100 series cameras. Not to say that they were poorly built, but this is substantially better. I do feel like that they have made a transition to this camera. I think originally when the X100 series was conceived and developed, it was a product that was produced for the high-end point and shoot market. But as this camera has produced almost a cult following of street photographers, I think that they are starting to change and really design and gear this camera to street photographers and more of the professional end. And I think that they've done a nice job of redesigning this camera, keeping the same aesthetics as the previous models. They've stayed true to the X100 series lineage, but they have made some substantial upgrades in the quality, build quality. So I was very excited about that. And last but not least, the tilt screen. So the screens, this last generation of Fujifilm cameras, the screens have been quite polarizing. Either you love it or you hate it for some reason. I don't know why it's such a big deal, but I think Fujifilm added the screen to the X100 series beautifully. It's flush with the body. I mean, if you didn't know that this camera had a tilt screen, you know, you just wouldn't know. You wouldn't know it was there. So, if you don't like the tilt screen or you don't want to use a tilt screen, you don't have to. It tucks perfectly away. You're not going to snag it on anything. I've never accidentally opened the tilt screen, and in fact, I've used the tilt screen on several occasions already out on the street, and it's a nice addition to this camera. And I think I'm going to enjoy that feature. I know a lot of people hate it, but I really do enjoy that new feature. And I think it'll be a nice asset for years to come with my photography. All right, now let's talk about some of the things I don't like, or some of the things that I feel like could have been, you know, avoided or upgraded, or fixed or changed. Maybe it'll change, you know, in future updates to the software. But for now, I just want to discuss some of the cons. There's not very many of them, but I thought they're worth mentioning. So we'll go over those. Several people have complained about overheating issues with this camera. I will say I don't intend to use this for video, or you know, I don't intend to use this camera for very long periods of time. So in my experience, it's not a huge issue, but it is something to mention. When I was out, it was about 90 some degrees outside, so it was a pretty hot and humid day. I did, after about 30 minutes or so, I did notice this part of the camera getting warm. And obviously I'm right-handed, so this is the side that I mainly, you know, have a hold on to most of the time when I'm shooting, unless I have this around my neck and I, you know, take a break from the camera. But I did notice that it did start overheating, like I said, in this area, and it was noticeable. I won't say that at any point in time did it become uncomfortable, or I felt like, oh, like it's burning my hand. But it was noticeably warmer, and it did get warm. Now, I can't say that that was consistent. Like, for me, I don't know. Anyways, I did notice it getting warm after about 30 to 35 minutes. And I can continue to use the camera like I normally would. And I felt like the heat in this area dissipated just a little bit. And it got a little better over time, which is kind of weird. I felt like it was, you know, if it heats up, it'll continue heating up. I kept on shooting like I normally would. So it wasn't that big of an issue for me, but it is a con, and I wanted to you know, be upfront with everyone. Even though I'm a super huge Fujifilm fanboy, and I love this camera, that was something that I noticed that I think that was worth mentioning. Another thing that I wish they would have upgraded is the battery. This camera uses the same battery as the X100F did, and I think it was the same battery that they used for the XT2 and maybe even the XT3, but it uses the same battery, and I don't know, I don't notice that much of a difference for the battery life over previous models. I think the battery life is not that great. Now, this is a small camera, and I guess you would have to trade off the form factor, and you know, I like having a smaller camera, so that way when I'm out there, you know, taking street photos, I don't draw a lot of attention to myself. But that's one thing that I wish they could have improved on, the battery life. You pretty much you have to order a couple more batteries, at least another battery, if you're going to be out shooting for any prolonged period of time, which I ordered on Amazon. And also, by the way, just wanted to let you know, obviously I've made some changes. I got the soft shutter button. I got the nylon strap, and the filter and adapter. So I will list all those products in the description below that I've added to this camera. But yeah, that overheating and the battery life, you know, they are you know, slight drawbacks. Nothing that's a game changer that's gonna, you know, avoid me from obviously buying this camera or keeping this camera, but just some things that I wanted to mention. Another thing that I wanted to mention too is I've always used one of these Lightning to SD card readers, and this is made by Apple. I've used this for quite some time now. I've never had an issue with it. I actually use my phone to edit my videos, and with the DJI Osmo Action, I've always uploaded 4K files to this or to my phone, and I've never had any issues. But for whatever reason, when I tried to upload the 4K video files from this camera, it would not upload with the 30 frames per second 4K video. For whatever reason, when I dropped it down to 24 frames per second, it uploaded just fine. And I even tried to use the app that Fujifilm has with this camera, and I got an error as well. So I don't know what the issue is with that, and hopefully Fujifilm will fix this issue in the future with software updates. But yeah, for whatever reason, I'm getting an error when I try to transfer those video files to my phone, which that's a drawback for me because I use my phone primarily to edit my videos. And you know, this is just you know, we're just talking about things that we don't like about the camera. It's kind of a nitpick, but again, I don't plan on using this camera for video primarily, but it would be nice to have some sort of image stabilization in this so you can get some usable shots handheld. Right now, in my opinion, you can't. It's just not made for handheld shooting, and it lacks any in-body or IBIS or even software-based image stabilization. So that's another drawback for me. Nothing too much to gripe about, but those are just my cons. I had to put some in there, right? I can't talk about all the good things about the camera and leave out the bad. So that's my first look of this camera. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and this camera will be a staple in my videos moving forward with my photography. Again, if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon so you are notified when I release new content. And I hope that will be on a consistent basis moving forward. Now that I'm getting used to my new work schedule, and I got this new camera, so I'm really excited to go out and shoot. We will have some more videos coming forward. So I appreciate you all watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.